This is the Investor Connect podcast program. I'm Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, family offices, private equity, and many other investors for early stage and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Investor Connect is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors and startups for fundraising. Please consider donating $100 to the program to help others in their investor and entrepreneur journey. You can find the donate button on the investorconnect.org website. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today I'm here with James Frinzi, CEO of Multiband Global. Multiband Global offers a solution for the complete IT and network life cycle from deployment to decommissioning. They are backed by logistics, enterprise field service systems, and a global technician base. James, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So tell us more about your work and what you do.
Sure. So our company is in the telecommunications space, and we're based in Austin, Texas, but we do actually have technicians in other parts of the globe, including Eastern Europe. And in America, we have technicians starting from West Virginia all the way through to California. And we offer a variety of services. Presently, we're offering fiber optic installation for mid-mile and last mile, basically from West Virginia all the way through to California. So we do have a southern focus, a southern and West Coast focus. We do have a handful of guys up in the Northeast, in like Illinois and areas like that, but the bulk of our business is primarily the geographical South and California. As far as America goes, presently we have operations ramping up in Eastern Europe where we are helping to establish cellular networks for carriers and for ISPs. And so it's a very exciting business for us. But beyond installing fiber and making installations, we also actually create equipment that hosts telecommunications networks. So for instance, everyone certainly must know what a cell tower looks like. And with the new architecture, it's actually smaller towers. In fact, our tower product is reduced to a light pole. And so we've developed a light pole that you can conceal up to 4 different radios inside of it. And you can house all the major players inside of it in a light pole, and no one would even know it's a cell tower right there. Our product is the industry standard in Charlotte, North Carolina. In fact, I believe it's the only one that's allowed to be installed. And you would walk around Charlotte all day. And when I'm there, I see where the cell towers are, but you would just see antique looking lights, traffic signals, public lighting, and so forth. So it's a great product in that it allows for the distribution of 5G, when needed 4G LTE communications to be distributed throughout a city without looking obnoxious or, ruining the aesthetic of the environment. So we're very excited about that product. We call it the Aspire line, and the ASP in that stands for Adaptive Smart Pole. It provides a lot of value additionally in that it reduces the amount of poles that you need to have, or towers you need to have in a city area, because we actually have a patent on the technology that can house multiple radios in one 5G access point pole. So the alternative to our product is you'd have to have one application or one host for each carrier. So that means that in one area, you'd have to have 4 times as many poles as you do when we only have to provide one. So, and that's a thing that's appealing for cities because it kind of eliminates the need for clutter in your area. And in a lot of places, they do care about aesthetics, quite frankly. So we're very excited about the growth of that. We really have a lot of growth opportunity for that in Eastern Europe and the United Kingdom, which are both target markets that we're heavily pursuing and having strong progress in. And you can see our product right now being installed in environments in Charlotte, Miami, Atlanta, Las Vegas, some throughout California, and we're trying to proliferate it even further in the United States.
Great. Well, let's talk about the telecommunications industry. Let's start with the technology first, where you're currently rolling out 5G. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So when we say that is we aren't competing with Ericsson or Nokia. We're not creating radios with the the 5G actual broadcasting. What we do, however, provide is the ability for them to install their equipment inside of our equipment so that they have a home, basically. So either they'd have to install something in our pole or they'd have to install it on the side of a building. And so we enable the 5G radios and tech providers a home for their equipment. And additionally, there are cases where we can install our own equipment and then we lease access to that network to those who need it. So for instance, say an area where a major carrier had poor reception, we could actually create our own 5G network and go to them and say, we'll charge you a toll. You can use our network where we are, and you don't have to spend the money for the infrastructure. And so it's a good pay for use because the market in America is actually, it's not end of life, but it's mature. There is 5G being built here, and there are antennas being installed. In Eastern Europe, there's still a lot of places where it's 3G.
Oh.
And yes. And so I've met with major carriers in a lot of these countries that they're posed with a business dilemma. Do we want to spend, say, $50 million to build our own equipment, which will take like 10 years for an ROI, or can we work with Multiband Global and let those guys build it out, and then we just rent it from them and pay as they go? And so that allows them flexibility in how they spend their money and realize their ROI on a cash flow basis. And then it allows us also to further monetize our own assets. So rather than selling a piece of equipment and moving on, it gives us sticking power, and we get to make income over a longer period of time. And that's a very exciting aspect for us to be. And especially, I like our position in the market because we're not competing against Ericsson. We aren't competing against the gorillas. We make them look better, and we make their communications more accessible to the carriers and the providers that use them.
Great. And so what's the driving trend in the space? When will we see 6G, and what's that going to bring us?
Shoot, I think that's going to be quite some time. And really, there hasn't been enough monetization of the 5G networks yet. And here's something that you should consider is that even on your own handset, if you have 5G, it really wouldn't necessarily make that much of a difference like on a day-to-day basis unless you're streaming video. Where it will make a difference is when people start streaming 4K resolution. And I'm not just talking about Netflix, but say that you are a physician and you have some radiology that you're expecting, and it's a huge 4K file that you need to be able to see that resolution. That's where 5G is going to make a huge difference when you're transacting 4K data at high speeds that has more of an application beyond streaming entertainment. And so, in fact, we are getting involved with our technology that will be a strong player in the part of transacting and broadcasting 4K quality video over 5G. And so it's a very exciting place to be in. Potentially for 6G, I've actually been to presentations and seen 8K video. And it's mind-boggling to see how big those files are. But for areas of, again, defense, medical, even for the types of security cameras that people, you watch Jason Bourne movies and you see the security camera picks up somebody's face really quick and, generates something. And that has to be in 4K. So by the time that this technology, the facial recognition and the video technology gets better, this could be at 8K. So it's only a matter of time before there has to be just crazy fast cellular broadcasting, for video. But I guess I answered that question pretty longly, but I'm going to say that nobody's going to go to commercial 6G until there's some monetization from 5. And it took them quite some time to monetize 4G or LTE. And so I would think that we're going to be at least in this 5G space for like another 10 years.
Well, great. Well, you've been operating a business in this space for some time. What does it take to make a successful company in the telecoms world today?
Well, that's a good question. And the way I'm going to answer that is you have to be versatile and listen to the market. And it's not a robotic situation. And I think that in this space, you can't look at the business from a spreadsheet. You can't look at it from a financial analyst. Now, you have to pay attention to spreadsheets, you have to pay attention to finance, but you also have to prepare for what are we selling 2 years from now? What are we selling 3 years from now? How do I position the company so that we are catching the future where the market is? Otherwise, we'll be left behind. I think we all remember companies like 3Com, US Robotics, BlackBerry. Those are people that didn't catch the market. And we're not here to be just an infrastructure provider. And we actually adapted our business model where we used to just sell our Aspire poles as one-off. And we recognize that there's a strong place for us in the market to provide that as a service. And so we're really happy to be there. And we're doing more work with stadiums as well, because everyone goes to stadiums, and there's very few times when you run into somebody and they say they had a good cellular experience at a stadium or an arena. And so we're coming up with technologies that improve customer experience at stadiums and arenas, sporting events and concerts that will be memorable. I mean, we're not necessarily looking for somebody to remember who we are, but I am looking for somebody to go to like 100,000 person college football game and remember that they could stream, they could order an Uber, they could actually text their friend to ask them to bring something back, and 5 people on their phone work functionally, and it helped their experience. And so we're just trying to be in places where it helps our customers make their customers happy, I suppose. And I think that's really what you have to look at, is that if you subscribe to AT&T, for example, and your phone works wherever you want it to work, you have a great customer experience at a large event or an area congregation, then we're doing our job. And it's not just black and white. It's coming up with interesting ideas to adapt for the future and make sure that you're always at the front of the customer experience.
So what's the main difference between you and your competitors? You've talked about some of your IP, but beyond that, what is different?
Well, that's a good question also, in that I don't really feel like we have one-to-one competitors. So there's people that sell one-off. When I say host, that means, like a pole, like what I've been talking about. And ours can host 4 radios, 4 carriers. Our competitors can host 1. And so I'm not even sure I consider them a competitor. I consider it just a participant in the industry with a different product that provides a different piece. So I think either you're going to buy what we're having for the Aspire product or you're not. Now, for the fiber installation, it is a commodity industry, quite frankly. But I will say that we have self-performing staff. We have people that have been with us for years, and we actually just keep gaining more and more market space because we are doing a good job. And so I think that in the area of installing fiber, either you're a huge company like MasTec that's in the billions of dollars, you're small cap market like us, or you're a shop with like 3 guys and a truck. So I can't really say other than, we have self-performing, we have long-term employees, and we have the quality to prove it. So from the fiber standpoint, that's a harder question to answer, I'd say. And I think that if you asked any of my actual competitors that are like roughly around our size, they'd probably say the same thing. But I will say that for Aspire and being a neutral host with our polls, I don't really consider anyone else to be a competitor. And for our networks that we install, I really couldn't say. I think that our technology is better. I think that our versatility, I think our desire, because I can tell you one thing, that if we're going to install a network, it's going to be a lot more important to us than it is going to be to somebody that's much bigger than us, and somebody that's smaller than us probably just doesn't have access to the tech and engineering that we have.
Great. So what surprises you most about the telecom market these days? Anything jump out as being unexpected?
I have to say that actually the main thing is quite honestly, one is there are a lot of horrible cellular experiences at large events. I went and saw Post Malone, and you'd think it's 2023, or maybe it was 2022 when I saw him. It was within the past few months. And you're trying to, everyone wants to stream, and the phone's like hardly even doing anything. And you're saying, how is this possible? You see all these ads, 5G this, 5G that, and your phone's not working. And so it's crazy. And I live in Austin, and I'll still drop calls in Austin. And if you just came from outer space and watched advertisements for telecom, you would think that this whole country is 5G and blazing fast, and it's just not. So there's still a lot to be developed. So I think that's one of the most surprising things. And actually, I have to say that if you look at telecom, it's probably as important as electricity or anything else, because how do you access jobs? How do you access employment? How do you access your bank? There's so many things that if you don't have access to good telecommunications, it leaves you on the outside looking in. Like if you had to look for a job tomorrow, where do you go? Do you find a newspaper? People need to have access to telecom. So, and I'm grateful that, in America, we do have really good access, but I don't think that it's where people expect it or wish it was.
Interesting. Well, in the last few minutes that we have here, what else should we cover that we haven't?
I did touch upon our business in Eastern Europe and United Kingdom, and we have some really great things to come, from those regions. I'm very excited about our international growth. We are putting the global into Multiband Global, and it's really great. And I have to say that being able to do business in Eastern Europe is very satisfying for us, in that we can make such an amazing impact on people's ability to access telecommunications, where, here I'm complaining about having like 4G and having like some things, drop here and there. But really, there's a lot of the world that, coming from Austin, you don't realize how poor cellular is in the rest of the world. And surprisingly, Scotland is a big market for us. And surprisingly, Scotland's a first world, place. And there's horrible cellular service in, places like Glasgow, which is their capital. So I like to be in places where we can make a big impact, where Multiband Global is not in a position where we could go to Germany and be a dominant player. And so I'm excited that with our research and our connections, that we have the ability to move into regions like Eastern Europe and the United Kingdom to become a dominant player, where we're not going to be drowned out by like Ericsson and Nokia and the big guys.
Okay. Well, that sounds great. Well, how best for listeners to get back in touch with you?
Shoot, you can find Multiband Global. We're on Twitter. You can look at, if you Google Multiband Global, we're very accessible. We're on LinkedIn. Our website is www.multibandglobal.com. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter also. We have an extremely active investor base. I hear from investors all the time, and it's really just interesting. I get a lot of questions, and people have to realize that we are a public company. And so I get a lot of questions I'd love to answer, but we're not allowed to, make those disclosures. And so, however, I always love hearing from people, and I always love having questions. If there are questions that I can entertain, I'll do it. But if if I don't respond, or if I respond back that, sorry, we're publicly traded, I can't respond to that, don't take it personal. So,
okay. Well, great. Well, thank you for joining us today. We'll put those in the show notes and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.